On the morning of June 12, 2025, Air India Flight 171 was scheduled for a routine departure from Ahmedabad, bound for London. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the bustling airport as ground crews prepared the aircraft for its long journey. The flight was operated by a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a symbol of modern aviation technology and safety. For the crew and passengers, it was expected to be just another uneventful trip across continents. On board were 230 passengers and 12 dedicated crew members. Families, business travelers and tourists alike settled into their seats, some chatting excitedly, others quietly preparing for the hours ahead. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, helping with luggage and ensuring everyone was comfortable. In the cockpit, the pilots meticulously completed their pre-flight checklists, communicating with air traffic control, and confirming that all systems were functioning perfectly. Soon, the Dreamliner accelerated down the runway and lifted gracefully into the clear morning sky, beginning what should have been a safe and routine flight. But just minutes after takeoff, the unimaginable happened. Without warning, the aircraft lost control and crashed into the campus of a medical college on the outskirts of the city. The impact was devastating, shattering the tranquility of the morning and leaving a scene of chaos and destruction. Of the 242 people on board, only one miraculously survived the crash. Rescue teams worked frantically, searching the wreckage for any signs of life, but hope quickly faded as the scale of the tragedy became clear. The disaster didn't just claim lives on the plane. 19 more people on the ground, including students and staff at the college, lost their lives in the catastrophe. In a matter of moments, 260 lives were lost, leaving families and communities in shock and mourning. The scale of the loss was almost impossible to comprehend. Emergency services rushed to the scene, battling intense fires and sifting through twisted metal in a desperate search for survivors. The aftermath was chaotic, with first responders working tirelessly amid the devastation. News of the crash spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and television screens across India and around the globe. The nation was gripped by shock and grief, as the world watched in disbelief. Almost immediately, urgent questions arose. How could a modern, reliable aircraft like the Dreamliner fall from the sky so soon after takeoff? Was it a technical failure, human error, or something else entirely? Teams from India's AAIB, Boeing, and the US FAA arrived at the crash site, determined to uncover the truth. They began the painstaking process of collecting evidence, analyzing the wreckage, and searching for the aircraft's black boxes. As investigators worked, the world waited anxiously for answers, desperate to understand what caused one of the deadliest air disasters in recent memory, and to ensure such a tragedy could never happen again. To truly understand the events that led to the crash, we first need to explore the intricate workings of the Boeing 787's engines and fuel systems. These components are the heart of the aircraft, and their design is a marvel of modern engineering, built with safety and reliability in mind. The Dreamliner is powered by two GE GNX engines, which are among the most advanced and dependable jet engines in commercial aviation. Each engine is equipped with multiple layers of safety redundancies, designed to keep the aircraft operational even in the face of unexpected issues. In fact, if one engine were to fail for any reason, the other engine is fully capable of keeping the plane flying safely, allowing pilots to divert to the nearest airport without endangering passengers or crew. The fuel system is equally sophisticated. Fuel is stored in the aircraft's wing tanks and delivered to the engines through a complex network of pumps, pipes, and electronically controlled valves. All of these are managed by switches and controls located in the cockpit, giving pilots precise command over fuel flow at all times. Each engine is fitted with a dedicated fuel control switch, which is a critical safety feature. This switch allows the crew to instantly cut off or restore fuel to an engine as needed. When set to run, fuel flows freely to the engine, enabling normal operation. Switching to cutoff immediately halts the fuel supply, shutting down the engine in seconds, a vital function in emergencies. To prevent accidental shutdowns, these switches are protected by robust locking mechanisms. This ensures that a simple bump or mistake cannot inadvertently stop an engine. Moving a switch from run to cutoff isn't easy. It requires a deliberate two-step action. Pilots must first unlock the switch before they can move it, adding an extra layer of safety. When investigators began their work, they quickly zeroed in on these fuel control switches. The odds of both engines failing at the same time due to a random technical fault are astronomically low, making the switches a focal point of the investigation. The exact position and status of the fuel control switches would soon become the key to unraveling the mystery behind the sudden and catastrophic loss of power on Flight 171. Flight 171's initial climb was uneventful, with the crew following standard procedures. Suddenly, at around 8,000 feet, both engines lost power. Fuel flow had been cut off. A single engine failure is serious but manageable. Losing both is a dire emergency, especially at low altitude. The aircraft became a powerless glider, descending rapidly over a densely populated area. The pilot's priority was to restart the engines, but time and altitude were running out. The preliminary AAIB report confirmed both engines shut down due to fuel starvation. The engines hadn't failed, they'd been turned off. This shifted the investigation's focus from mechanical failure to cockpit actions. The critical question: how did both fuel switches get moved to cutoff? Investigators turned to the aircraft's black boxes for answers. The fate of Flight 171 hinged on what happened in those final moments. The crash site was a scene of devastation, but investigators quickly recovered the black boxes. Among the wreckage, the fuel control panel was found. Both switches were in the cutoff position. The protective guards on the switches showed no signs of failure. They had been physically moved. This confirmed the engines were shut down by human action, not mechanical fault. No evidence of fire, structural failure, or engine malfunction was found. The aircraft was airworthy until its fuel supply was severed. The investigation now focused squarely on the cockpit. The question was no longer what failed, but who, or what, moved the switches. The physical evidence told a clear story. The disaster was caused by an action inside the cockpit. The next step was to analyze the cockpit voice recorder for answers. The cockpit voice recorder, often called the black box, revealed that the flight began just like any other. The pilots chatted calmly as the aircraft climbed steadily, following their routine checklists and procedures. Everything seemed perfectly normal in those first few minutes, with no hint of the disaster that was about to unfold. Suddenly, chaos erupted in the cockpit as both engines unexpectedly shut down. Warning alarms blared, filling the confined space with urgent, piercing sounds. The pilots' voices shifted from calm to alarmed in an instant. One pilot, his voice tight with panic, urgently asked, "Why are the fuel switches off?" The question hung in the air, loaded with confusion and fear. The other pilot, sounding equally baffled, denied ever touching the switches. Both men were clearly shocked, unable to explain how such a critical mistake could have happened. This tense exchange confirmed that the fuel switches had indeed been moved, cutting off the engine's lifeblood, but neither pilot admitted responsibility, deepening the mystery and tension in the cockpit. The crew frantically tried to restart the engines, racing against time as the aircraft lost altitude. They flipped switches, scanned checklists, and called out procedures, desperately hoping for a miracle. They reversed the switches to run, following emergency protocols to the letter, but the engines remained silent. By now, the aircraft was flying dangerously low over the city, its altitude dropping rapidly with every passing second. There simply wasn't enough time for the engines to spool up and deliver the thrust needed to save the flight. The recording captured the crew's desperate last-ditch efforts to regain control, their voices growing more frantic as the ground rushed closer, ending abruptly with the sound of impact. The audio provided no clear answer as to who moved the switches or why, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Investigators were left with a chilling puzzle. A deliberate action had occurred, but there was no clear agent or motive behind it. The sense of mystery only deepened. The black box data, while thorough, only deepened the mystery, showing that the switches were moved by human hands but not revealing who or what prompted the action. The evidence pointed to human action, but the intent behind it remained elusive, leaving experts baffled. With no clear answers, the search for motive or error became the investigation's new focus, as the world waited for an explanation to this haunting tragedy. The FAA launched a thorough review of the Boeing 787's fuel control system. Their tests showed the switches could not move to cutoff without a deliberate two-step action. No mechanical fault or design flaw was found that could explain the switch's movement. Even with the locking mechanism disengaged, the switches required conscious effort to move. the FAA's verdict, the aircraft's design was not at fault. This shifted the investigation entirely to human factors. The focus was now on the actions and decisions made in the cockpit. The question of intent or error became central to the case. With mechanical failure ruled out, investigators faced two possibilities: catastrophic human error or deliberate sabotage. Could a pilot have moved the switches by mistake, despite their protected design? The cockpit voice recording complicated this theory. Both pilots expressed confusion, not guilt or panic. Investigators also considered incapacitation or miscommunication, but found no clear evidence. The darker possibility: intentional sabotage by someone in the cockpit. Background checks revealed no motive or warning signs in either pilot's history. As of late July 2025, the investigation had not determined whether error or intent was to blame. The cause remained an open, deeply troubling question for the industry. The crash and its findings prompted immediate action from regulators and Air India. The FAA issued a global advisory, urging airlines to check fuel switch locking mechanisms and reinforce cockpit procedures. Air India launched a fleet-wide inspection, finding no issues but aiming to restore public confidence. Airlines worldwide began retraining pilots on the critical importance of fuel control switches. These were precautionary steps, not admissions of fault. No individual has been officially blamed. The investigation remains focused on procedures and cockpit actions. The industry's priority: prevent a similar tragedy, regardless of the final cause. The search for answers continues, with safety as the guiding principle. The investigation into Flight 171 is ongoing, with the ultimate cause still unknown. Every detail, from flight data to crew backgrounds, is being meticulously analyzed. Investigators are building psychological profiles of the crew, searching for subtle clues in the cockpit audio. All scenarios remain on the table until the final report is complete. Rushing to judgment risks missing the truth and dishonors the victims. The goal is not blame, but understanding and prevention. The legacy of Flight 171 will be written in the AAIB's final report. Until then, speculation is premature. Only evidence will reveal the truth. Through patience and rigorous analysis, aviation safety will move forward, ensuring such a tragedy is never repeated.